Hey everybody, welcome back to the videos channel, and today we look into the recent security incidents in the JavaScript ecosystem and how you can protect yourself as a developer or team lead against them. Let's go. Security problems in the JavaScript ecosystem are not that new. We've seen a lot of CVEs filed, for example the ones for Vite recently that only targeted development, but still you don't want your code get stolen. Links to all of that in the video in the show notes and also to more links. But we've also seen packages being misused, malicious code being injected, etc., etc. Though the recent wave is a bit different because this was some kind of bigger coordinated attack. You might have heard what happened, but we still cover it high level. Then we'll take a look at what package authors and maintainers can do. And most importantly, last but not least, what you can do as a developer, end user of these packages, and maybe also engineering lead. Let's get into it. The whole thing started at the end of August, where the popular monorepo tool NX was compromised and a malicious version being published on NPM. The NX team itself published a postmortem about how this actually could happen, and the reason, well, there were three parts contributing to that. One thing, well, actually the most severe one, was that the PR title validation workflow allowed to run against the pull request target, so the actual target branch itself and not the fork, so their repository secrets can be accessed, which is a problem. Together with being able to read and write code, because the workflow permission was set to that, this allowed quite some issues. But more details in this blog post that I've also linked in the description as usual. So you might think, okay, yeah, NX, big tool, especially in the Angular universe, but especially among enterprises as well. It's widely used. That was just the start, actually, of a bigger wave. The attackers, also known as Singularity or just NX attackers, actually striked again and then compromised more than at least 147 packages. If you have a look at the impacted packages, then we see a few common names, actually. For example, CrowdStrike here. Yep, in an incident again. But honestly, no shame on them, because as soon as one of these packages is impacted, then, well, the whole organization can be. Great details also on the blog post from Aikido, linked below. We'll also see other organizations, and eventually these packages all have quite some downloads. So if you, for example, go back here to the control tiny color packages, this is like 2 million weekly downloads. And we've seen more packages being targeted and being compromised eventually. And taking a look at tiny color again, yes, it has 2.2 million weekly downloads here, but this is also just a small part of these so-called supply chain attacks. Because of course, the more the dependency is used as a sub-dependency in other projects, well, the more high value the target is, and then the goal is to publish some malicious code and go all the way into supply chain, which means just new projects downloading the updated version, people not noticing, and then running some scripts which fetch, well, GitHub keys, tokens in general, crypto wallets, and whatever these hackers actually are up to. It really depends. But nevertheless, there are a couple of options from phishing to these tokens through misconfigured workflows, through, well, just computers that are actually infested with some viruses. There are a couple of ways to actually obtain control of an NPM package. But there are some things that package maintainers can do about. And one thing is trusted publishing. This is actually available for a few months now. It's generally available before it was for selected people. And the idea is that we just say, okay, let's publish our package only from the CI/CD. You're good to go. And they're trusted. We don't need any NPM token, so that also can't be really confiscated. And we're good to go. This is actually a good idea and a common practice that more and more packages should adopt. Now, this is straight away available for NPM, and that's amazing, so package maintainers can adopt them. Supported are GitHub Actions, so GitHub hosted runners, and also the GitLab CI/CD pipelines. Later on, self-hosted runners are work in progress. As most packages are hosted on one of these platforms anyway, we're good to go. But actually, if we have a look, there is a repository from Kevin Deng, the author of TSDAO and part of the UCore team. He actually created an overview of NPM packages who do not use and who actually do use these trusted publishing. And we have here a list of untrusted ones, right? And he made an interesting post on Blue Sky saying, okay, all the packages affected by recent attacks, they didn't have trusted publishing enabled. And also, no provenance. And the top 4 packages we see here, ANSI styles, debug, supports color, chalk, well, they were all impacted. And actually, one more in the top 10 of these who actually have a lot of downloads, right? More than a billion per month and no trusted publishing. So this is something that package maintainers could really enable to make sure, okay, there is no way to compromise or to get the NPM token from, I don't know, one weird thing on my machine because there is no NPM token needed. The CI is trusted itself through that GitHub action on a repository, for example, and then it will just be published from there, and that's it. There's actually even an issue on the E18E ecosystem issues repository, also from Kevin, to say, okay, it would be good to promote these trusted publishing process for example, major frameworks, major libraries, etc. And there's also a difference between having provenance enabled and using trusted publishing. Nevertheless, that's more of a detail for package maintainers, and it's a good idea, but it requires that you actually publish through the CI. There is no way to do that then fully locally. That's also something that Puya, the author of Nitro and AnJS leader, mentions further down in the thread. He says, seconding Wesley Todd's comment, we'll have a look at that in a second, we need to put more pressure on GitHub to support 2FA publishers. It is the only blocker for me for migrating AnJS packages to a trusted publisher from local. So Wes there posted also on Blue Sky to say like, okay, it would be great to have a 2-factor authentication workflow. So it's, well, not more secure what we have right now than a human who is using 2-factor authentication. So that would be a great thing to have. And in a way, yes, it would be good to have 2-factor authentication for like, okay, here we go as a release. I have to confirm that on my phone or like any of the maintainers. That's definitely true. On the other hand, there is already an upgrade now because you don't need an NPM token, which is great. There is one point that he has though in terms of, well, it's not really an issue because if I can compromise an NPM account, then I just say like, okay, I disable that setting that I need trusted publishing and that's it. So that's an actual problem. And here the detail comes in on how you as a developer can actually protect yourself against certain attacks. And there are 2 important parts that you can follow here. Well, actually 3. The first one is pretty easy. Bug your maintainers to enable trusted publishing. That's better than not having it. It doesn't do any harm, and it would already help against certain types of attacks. So that's the easy one. Still, this is not really in your hand, and it's just a thing like participate in open source, giving feedback, and being kind. But here are the 2 really important ones. The first one is a GitHub action made by Daniel Rowe, and it's pretty interesting because I just mentioned, okay, if there is a malicious attacker, they have access to your NPM account, so they can just say, okay, I just disable trusted publishing and provenance for packages. That's absolutely correct. They can do that. But with this GitHub action, then your CI would fail. If you have a dependency update, then this action would check, hey, okay, is there any package that actually lost this provenance? So it's not trusted published anymore. If yes, then goodbye. As in the CI fails and nothing will pass anymore. Of course, you can also configure that a bit and make sure this works and complies with your workflow. But in the end, this is a really nice missing puzzle piece to trusted publishing, because now it is very easy to say, I have to enforce it, not in terms of all my packages need trusted publishing. That will likely not happen anytime soon. But at least I know that maintainers who have enabled it, well, there will be a red flag or a warning when they disable it again. And then you have to manually check, okay, so if a package XYZ was not published via trusted publishing anymore, so via CI/CD, that should ring some alarm bells. And I think that's a great step. But there is one more thing. PNPM as a package manager. Use it. I mean, you're like, why should I use a different package manager? I can just use NPM. I can just use, I don't know, Yarn, Bun, whatever. You can. First of all, disclaimer, not affiliated with any of these. But PNPM, in terms of security, is your best bet there. You wonder why? Let's have a look. Some of you, if you used Nuxt.js v2, might remember this wonderful ASCII art, and thanks for installing Nuxt.js script that was running whenever you, well, installed Nuxt.js, talking about like, hey, what's the balance of our open collective, etc., etc. Interestingly, this still has 13 million downloads a month, this package. Crazy. and it's quite old, but it still works. The interesting part is though, this thing always ran in a post-install hook, which also means that any kind of script could run in a post-install hook of dependencies you install, which doesn't only sound dangerous, it actually is. Not only annoying if you don't always want to see like, hey, the maintainer of XYZ is looking for a job. All happened, you know. Nevertheless, post-install scripts are not a thing for most package managers, except npm. I mean, you can change the flag there, but pnpm, among others, actually disables them by default. Also here you have an option to say, okay, you know what, dangerously allow all builds. So all the build script, pre-install, install, post-install, they will just run automatically. You can do that, of course, also fine-grained. I would never enable this and only do this with, well, trusted dependencies manually to actually build them, if necessary, things that rely on native builds like ES build, roll down, etc. But most of the time, you don't have to mess with that. So there's a really good reason why post-install scripts are a thing of the past. I'm also happy about that. Less load in the console and less risk for you. But once again, this is something that Yarn, for example, also has. So why not talking about the new feature that's, I think, one more thing for PNPM's security-aware policy here. And this one came in PNPM 10.16 on September 12th, so not that long ago. And there is a new setting called minimum release age. And this is a super interesting one. I think it was requested for quite a while, not like years, but like weeks or months, which is quite fast in open source, right? And the idea is to say, okay, let's reduce the risk of installing a compromised package version. So if it might not be detected in like the first day or the second day, but maybe after a week, someone of like a, I don't know, like a high value dependency with gazillions of downloads, maybe have a look at that. You can just avoid the whole hassle. So you can define this minimum release age to say, okay, no worries. Let's make sure the package is at least 1,440 minutes old, which is at least a day. Of course, you can also set it further to like a week, maybe not a month or so, then you miss out half of the JavaScript ecosystem, right? But still like a couple days or a week sounds reasonable. Of course, this is also fully customizable. So you can say, hey, let's exclude a dependency here because I'm trusting them. I always want to have these up to date. And this is a setting I would definitely enable for all the projects to make sure, okay, you don't need like the daily newest version of things, except of these you actually trust. Then you can definitely enable that. But for all the transitive dependencies, why would you? You might not even know the names of them, right? So make sure, I know, like you want to get the latest Next View Vite version because they all use trusted publishing. All good. That's a great feature. And this is also a way to protect yourself, or at least mitigate the risk of running into a malicious package. Will it fully avoid everything? Probably not. So you might still want to install something like Renovate or Dependabot and go through dependencies and have a look at things. That's usually always better than manual updating anyway. Still, all of these things are only ways to mitigate the things and not to fully avoid them. But I hope with the GitHub action, which you can probably run on all your repositories easily if they're on GitHub, and PNPM, you're better off. Also, let me know what you think about the security incidents. If you have any more questions, drop them in the comments as usual. And next week, we'll have some more Vue Next content, I hope. Unless there are other bad things happening in the ecosystem, which is unlikely, but not too unlikely. Anyway, have a great day and see you all soon. Happy hacking. But not in my NPM packages.